All right. Hello there, sir. Uh-oh, we've got you muted. Hold on. All right. How are you?
I am well. Can you still hear me? There we go.
I can see and hear you. Yes, I got you. Hello, hello. All right, guys. Today is 7/7/24. And I'm saying the date because I love numbers and I believe that seven is a lucky number. So this may not be an evergreen video today, but today we're going live with the Honorable Raymond Kemp Sr. We're going to talk about some interpretations in leadership. We're going to have fun, especially since LinkedIn was so excited about this conversation that it started, what, 5 hours early, sir? Was that?
It did. It did.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. It's 6 o'clock on the dot. We're going to get started. We'll get to some check-ins from the team in a little bit to find out and make sure we're good on all platforms. My name is Sherry James. I am the Executive Chief Experience and Executive Officer for Phoenix Speaks and 2020 Lives Changed. I have the honor to spend some time today with the Honorable Raymond Kemp Sr. He's going to talk to us a little bit about his experience with leadership in the military and in his life, and we'll talk about how those leadership skills translate right now into real life. So, Mr. Kemp, please do introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are.
Hi, my name is Raymond Kemp Sr. And first and foremost, I'm super honored to be here. What a great connection. We probably didn't even realize what happened at that networking event coordinated by a friend of ours. Well, but I am honored to be here. I'm a Navy veteran, served just over 3 decades in the world's finest Navy, go Navy. And upon my retirement, I started Kemp Solutions, which is a leadership development firm that helps organizations build loyalty and resilience. In this day and age, particularly in this hybrid work environment, I think it's very important that we have employees, team members, and people that are part of our organization who are all in for the organization. And so I can help people with a particular perspective that was honed while in the Navy. When I retired, I was the Fleet Master Chief for Navy Europe, Navy Africa. Perhaps we'll talk about what that means later. And then also on.
Can we put a pin in that? Can we talk about that first? Because I know that you tend to I want to know who you are and I want everyone else to know who you are. So you mentioned that you were the Fleet Master Chief for the UN
Navy
and
Europe.
For Navy Europe.
Yeah, Navy Africa, right. It's about 60,000 people, but the position, and I didn't start there, by the way. I started at the lowest rank possible in the Navy and made my way into that position, which out of just under 300,000, it's the number one, was at least when I was in the seat, the number one position in the enlisted force. And what that means is for those of you who are in private industry or private industries, if you think about your C-suite, take the chief technical officer, the chief operating officer, and let's say the CHRO, and merge them into one person, like earned position, merge them into one position. That's what the Fleet Master Chief does. The opportunity to transit from the most senior officer to the most junior person in uniform without people thinking it's unusual. A very familiar position for the force. And I would say that the chief's mess, that is the ranks of E7, 8, and 9, those ranks are what keep the Navy going. The backbone of the Navy is what the Navy calls us. So making my way into that position was a very interesting journey. And more background, I was born in the great nation of Texas, raised in Oklahoma by a single mom and a bunch of aunts and 2 uncles who had a lot of influence on the type of character that I carried with me, and the responsibility of behaving appropriately everywhere. Seeing women who excelled in what they did and were just fierce angels in every position as I was growing up, kind of set the tone for my expectation for myself. Oftentimes saying, well, if they could do it, then certainly I could do it. If they could endure the challenges that they went through, and I was born in the 60s, raised in the 70s, if they could endure those challenges that I watched them go through, then surely I too, and what I thought was a meritocracy, would be able to do the same thing. So excelled to the rank of Fleet Master Chief, and as I culminated my career, again, it's about 60,000 people. And then transitioned out. The president appointed me to the American Battle Monuments Commission. So about a month ago, just almost a month ago to the day, I was over in France with the president and several other commissioners as we commemorated the 80th anniversary of D-Day. So most of your listeners and those who might be watching it later have likely seen the cemetery in Normandy. And there are 25 other cemeteries in 16 other countries around the world. And that's what the American Battle Monuments Commission ensures is running properly. And we have the appropriate understanding with the local government. So the American cemetery is well maintained. And that's who I am.
Wow, that's a lot. I was trying to take notes so that I didn't miss anything. I'm sure I missed at least 5 or 6 things. But so from a leadership perspective, so what we're talking about today is just different interpretations on leadership. And
Sure.
based on what you just told us, you have the experience of managing having about 60,000 people that you were responsible for, right? Which is
Sure.
significant. And having the title of Chief Technology Officer, Chief Human Resource Officer, and Chief Operations Officer all merged into one. As a project manager, it just gave me heart palpitations because I can't imagine the amount of stress and frustration to have all 3 of those roles, being responsible for managing the people, onboarding, offboarding, training, all of that, being responsible for the technology and how those people communicate with each other and others. Is also stressful. And then just understanding, making sure that everyone is working together and making sure that the operations of this naval fleet is successful. So how do you manage some of that? Like, how did you learn the skills that were necessary? Because 60,000 people, I know you can't see them all at the same time. So how did you manage such a large number of people that you were responsible for? How do you manage that? And not lose sight of the people that might fall through the cracks?
Sure. So first and foremost, I just want to go back to, I started at the absolute lowest level. And so step by step, brick by brick is how I got into that position. Starting 4 days into the Navy, I was what was titled a company, a division leader. And so a squad. So, and I had like 19 people. I was 17 years old, 19 people then, and trying to teach them how to mark and the sailorization, going from a civilian to a sailor. And starting then, and then working my way through my career, I realized very early that you need smart people around. You need people who are willing to teach others, express a level of care for other people so that they are willing to work hard and try hard to attain whatever the requirement may be. So in the early days, it was marching. In my latter days, it was warheads on foreheads. And so the willingness to do that and having someone who has already done it, because experience is important. I think with wisdom and age and sets and reps, there comes the knowledge of the way to go, but with youth comes the energy, to go and get there. And so for me, it was important to have the people who knew how to do the job and do it appropriately, who were willing also to share that with other people, because I'm altruistic by nature. So to have people around me who were also altruistic was extremely important, and for them to be just wicked smart. And so the willingness to find those folks, the systems in place so that there's checks and balances, to touch your PNP brain, so there's checks and balances, sure that that people knew what their expectations were, what the why was, that was the best and most efficient way to manage large groups of people and smaller groups as well. I mean, because there's a bit of an argument between some I say, and I'm one of them, that micromanagement is management. It's just, how are the people, going to deal with that? Absentee management is management, but how, you know what I'm saying? So finding, that right touch, because it may be different for other people. One thing that I know is very important, though, is having systems in place and people that you trust. So a lot of words right there, but the bottom line is the way to most efficiently and effectively manage a large group of people is one, choose the right managers in place to ensure that the systems and processes are in place so that the people are able to learn, train, and go all the way.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that. I love the warheads on foreheads. Every time I hear that, that just takes me out every time. But I do want to talk about this topic of trust. So one of the questions that we had that came in earlier, that people wanted us to discuss, was trust. So I love that you use that in your response, and I'll use that as a segue to our next question. So the question is, how do you maintain that trust of your direct reports, whether it's 19 or 60,000 of them, when you are human and you make mistakes, and not every choice you make is the right choice? How do you keep the trust of the people that report to you when you are just a humaning, right? You're doing human stuff. How do you do that? Give me some feedback on my own personal journey as a leader. Tell me how did you keep and then maintain that trust?
My most sincere and just from the depths of my heart would be to encourage people, one, to have some measure of self-empathy. Don't think that you yourself are some sort of automaton or AI or computer-based program that is not going to have errors. Let's just start with our ability to forgive ourselves. And then in establishing trust, one of the fastest ways to establish trust is through consistency. That might sound, counterintuitive, but one of the fastest ways to establish trust is to be consistent. Something that's extremely important, and I found this even since I've gone beyond wearing a uniform and in the Navy, is that a measure of authenticity and a tiny measure of vulnerability. Those three things will create space where people trust you. One, they realize that you're human and not a machine. And I'll share a super quick story. I was in Japan. We had a station in Japan. We had a super hard job. It was between the years of 1998 and 2002. So you and your listeners can get your will with that information. And
I wasn't born yet. I don't know.
We're doing this super duper hard job, and we were having a moment of rest and relaxation. I was sitting on this little kind of a grassy knoll, a little bit of a hill, and we were having some food brought out to us, and we're just kicking back, and we were having conversation, laughing about something that was going on socially. And one of the guys looked over at me and he said, "Man, you're like a regular person." And I was like, "Well, thank you. I mean, what do I do with that?" And he's like, "Nah, man, you be so focused, so on and so forth." And what can happen sometimes is that when people think that we're always so intense and are always so focused, they may think that we're just some weird being who's just built for whatever that task may be. And so showing that human side, again, with a measure of transparency, a measure of vulnerability, that creates, with consistency, that creates trust that will just pay into the years.
I love it. That's awesome. It makes sense. I've got a question from Michelle. You ready?
Uh-oh. I'm ready. Always ready.
Michelle wants to know, what is a red herring?
Hilarious. and so here's the thing. I think, and I know without a doubt, particularly with someone who is very intentional with their linguistic agility, that oftentimes we will take a definition common to some and make it our own in whichever type of way. And so without giving too much of the background in talking about something that doesn't exist, which would be a school of orca, by the way, which are killer whales, and having a red fish swim among those orca was the intention of the comment of red herring. Get out of here with you. That's so
I
funny.
told you we're gonna have some fun. We gotta have fun with it too. Well, I know that one of the things that you do as a keynote is that you do keynotes, and I know we talked a little bit about trust from leadership. How do we gain and retain that trust? You talked about having a large number of direct reports in the Navy. Now, talk to me about your experience with keynotes. So, what was your absolute favorite keynote of all time? And tell us what that was, and tell us why.
My favorite keynote was talking about starting with why. So there's a great book by Simon Sinek that came out probably around 2009, 2010. And he talked of, and very frankly, it was a book written by a middle-aged guy to other middle-aged guys on how to communicate with millennials. And the concept was, if you start with why, then people will understand their job and they'll do a better, and they will execute with a higher level of competency because they know the importance of it. And I fully agree with that. And so over the years, while in the Navy and beyond, one of my favorite keynotes is the reason to start with why, and then the value of that. And at one point in one of my keynotes, I was talking about, starting with why, and there's an example of, one of my young sailors who was a cook, and I was telling her, look, you are as important as the guy who's loading, the bombs on the aircraft, and the pilot who's flying that aircraft, and again, warhead, forehead, right? So in helping her understand that if we, the people, don't get the appropriate fuel and the appropriate nourishment that goes with functioning, like our brains have to have a certain amount of calories, and we have to be hydrated at a certain level for our bodies to work right. If you, the cook, are not doing these things, then we all have a problem, and so forth. And the next, she was 10 feet tall and bulletproof when it came down to, putting together, the food and preparing it for the crew. But I also talked about how it's important that we are able to lean on one another. So establishing trust isn't just the leader's responsibility. The leader's responsibility is also to inspire trust amongst the team. And so as I was talking about inspiring trust to one another, I saw, and I'm not by any stretch of the imagination a singer. I'm a cadence caller. Some might call a cadence sanger. So if we're running
singer,
and we're
got it.
Okay. Now we're running and calling, some people might know it as Jody's. If we're calling and running, I can do that with the best of them, but singing not. But the song came to my mind by a guy who happened to have been in the Navy. In the song, I would introduce it as a poem, and I would say that there's this poem, and some of you might know it, that begins with, sometimes in our lives we all have pain and we all have sorrow. And so for those who don't know, that song is Lean on Me. So by the time I got to that part, the whole crowd is clapping, and we were having everybody was like a giant choir. That keynote was likely my favorite one. There's probably, I don't know, a little less than 1,000 people there, but it was so fun. And people understood that when you create that space of trust, understanding that your competency has an impact on the overall mission of the organization and the stakeholders, then you will just perform at a whole different level. And so that was probably my favorite.
Well, I mean, if that's the case, I feel like you should probably sing for us. I feel like we should do a little Lean on Me now. People
feel a lot of things.
Okay, well, no singing for us today then. Okay, good. No, that's awesome. I know that music, we talk about mental wealth deposits, right? So that's a part of our programming here. And you know for a fact that music is a part of one of my mental wealth deposits. So the Honorable Mr. Kemp was with me when I spoke at an event, and I broke out into song and ran across the audience singing, was it Walking on Sunshine, right? So
right. Yeah, amazing. Yeah. That was a masterclass on how to handle a crowd even in the spontaneity of having people on stage. Yeah, that was definitely a deposit for me that day.
That was a lot of fun. Thank you. So let's talk more about like mental wealth, right? Let's integrate some of the leadership rules and regulations when it comes to mental wealth. So, I did about the same amount of time you did in the military, I did in corporate America, right? So I did my time. I don't get a bunch of little like nice. I should have some stripes and some medals. I didn't get those though. I know. I got to work on that. That's probably something we should work on. But no, I know that one of my challenges as being a leader is that I'm very much an empathic leader. I want to make sure that I know what's going on with my team, that I understand. I want to know what is a mental wealth withdrawal for my team so that I am not one of the reasons that it makes their jobs difficult. So talk to me about that. Talk to me about the difference when it comes to mental wealth. Leading in the military, I would imagine, would be a very high level of stress. I know that you've been in situations, maybe combat zone situations where that trust has to be paramount because you don't have time to reiterate, you don't have time to reassure. So talk to us a little bit about the difference between mental wealth deposits when it comes to the time that you've been in a leadership position and mental wealth withdrawals, and tell me kind of how you navigate those.
Sure. First of all, let me tell you that I've done 11 combat deployments. That equals about 60,000 hours, and that's a reasonable amount of time to deal with the stress of combat. And when I say combat, sometimes combat deployments might be between 7 and 9 months. A combat mission could be a week, 2 weeks, or something like that. But it's still the combat zone nonetheless. What does happen is the deposits have to be made in such a way, from my perspective and my style, the deposits have to be made in such a way that they will make up for violent, unexpected withdrawals. So if I could start with the deposits, one of the many ways for deposits is figuring out the appropriate harmony of the day. And so some people experience a measure of stress just on the fact that their day doesn't have a routine. And so because there's not a routine, there's a lot of chaotic decisions that have to be made, and there's no measure of anticipation of what might be coming. And so a way for folks to have a solid rhythm of deposits is for them to have a routine. And so building that routine, there are subtle deposits that go in there, whether it be, I have a very strict routine. I don't know if we have time to talk about it today, but I have a very strict routine in the morning. There's 10 things that I do every single morning before I talk to anyone else or deal with anybody else. And they're victories. So stacking up victories every morning is a way to make those deposits, because when those withdrawals come, those very unexpected mental wealth withdrawals come, you want to have something in the bank, and so you build those things in. Now, as a leader, it might be understanding the language that is most elevating to the person. There's a book, The 5 Love Languages, and so some people need a pat on the back, some people need words of affirmation, some folks need gifts, acts of service, and those things. And so that's a way for the leader to make those deposits for others, again, so that when the unexpected happens, that measure of empathy is there, which is also going to slow down that harsh withdrawal and create space for people to have enough in their mental wealth bank so that they're not depleted by the unexpected withdrawals. And when in the occasion that you find yourself in the negative, and that absolutely happens, trusting that system, trusting that routine, those habits that are going to be fulfilling, whether it be, I live in Dallas, Texas, and so I live near this place called White Rock Lake, so going for a walk, I know that's a deposit for me. So if I find myself in a deficit, I can go to that walk, I can call somebody who I trust on the phone, I can listen to a song, to your point previously. And those are ways that I would balance the withdrawals and the deposits.
I love it. That's awesome. We have to bring you on board. I like the way you said that. Just go promote creating mental wealth. So it's kind of along the lines of one of the questions that we have in the chat. So Chris said, "What leadership style do you feel is most impactful for the mental wealth of everyone you work with?" So we talked a little bit about micromanagement, right? Because we know that that is a management style. But so, which style do you feel is the most impactful for the largest number of people? I think is what Chris is asking.
Sure. Well, it varies on what the organization is responsible for. I mean, there that transformational leadership style. If you work, for example, I was a combat communicator, and so IT. And so in that world, one of the best leadership styles was to be that transformational leader, like we're ever evolving because technology began to move so fast between 1986 and 2019, and so. For people who are constantly coming up with ideas, being that transformational leader is supremely helpful because you continue to grow and go. And so I would say to Chris that when it comes to stylistically speaking, that's really going to depend on the organization and the mission within.
I love it. I got it. I'm checking questions here. I got it.
I,
I think
I
Chris.
hope I don't mean for that to be a bailout answer, but I just want to be conscious of time.
Oh, Chris. I think Chris will hold you accountable if so. He'll let us know. I'm waiting to see if once he responds in the chat.
Okay.
Okay, so while we're waiting for Chris to respond, I'll hit you with another one of our questions. One of the other questions is name 3 women you admire and why.
That's interesting. So the I can give you 3 quick ones, right? So first, I would start with, and this is going to be beyond my mom, my grandma, and my aunts because they were the most impactful, influential. I saw them up close. I know they were living out what they were telling me to do. So I'll leave those out, and I'll just go to folks that people might know. April Beldo was a Navy leader who was she was the first command master chief of a woman who was the command master chief of an aircraft carrier. Aircraft carrier's got about 5,000 people, about 70 aircraft on it, nuclear propulsion plant, and lots of important things. She did that with style and grace. I would also say Michelle Obama, who is a tremendously eloquent, well-educated lawyer who is highly skilled in a way that we really don't celebrate so much because of the fame of her husband. But her level of brilliance when it comes down to impact within the community is beyond anything that we truly recognize. And I have the measure of reverence for people who will allow their partner, in this case her husband, to get all the what we call shine in my neighborhood, to get all of the accolades. But the true fact is that she's shockingly brilliant. And I have a friend, his name is Dion Dawson. He has a nonprofit organization and working very closely with them. And even he is sharing with me the brilliance that she brings to the table. And the third, I'm trying to think of someone that the audience would know. I think the third would be someone who I think is really inspiring the nation right now, and that's Sarah Jakes Roberts. She's written a couple of books that are just really, really smart. She has impact and influence relevant to the younger generation. And I think it's just so important. Michelle Obama and April Belder are about the same age. Sarah Jakes, I think, is 35-ish, 36. Shockingly influential, really, really just wicked smart, not just riding the coattails of her family name or her husband's name. She by herself and of her, I think very, very influential and impactful. So those would be the 3.
That's awesome. I love it. I got it. All right. So Chris says, let me give you his response. Can you see it? I'll read it for you. I love that. He said, I love that. Being a transformational leader in this day is definitely key. And that's something he still struggles with to some extent in his day job. So he tends to be a very fixed person when it comes to his mentality. So thank you for that response. So we also have a question. What innovative leadership practices have you adopted recently, and how have they impacted your team?
Yeah. So one of the I don't know if I call it a practice, because I have been in a very fixed and regimented life. I'm comfortable doing the same thing every day without changing it much. However, I understand the value of being malleable. One thing that I have done recently is I have accepted the fact that AI is just going to be part of life. And so I started with using some AI search engines just to kind of get ideas and information differently than I would through Google. And what it has done for my team is they're like, man, welcome to the 21st century. Let me show you something else. And it's created space for them to show me things that previously I might not have been. It may not have appeared that I was open to. And again, that goes back to being the type of leader who is willing to communicate fully with your team with that measure of transparency and authenticity. So that they will realize you are open to those things. Because my resting face is not very approachable.
I mean, I wasn't going to say it. I wasn't going to say it. I was just going to see if it popped up in the chat or something somewhere. So I'm glad that you are self-aware enough to, no, just kidding. We all have that energy. And so I want to talk a little bit more about that though, because we talked about an iceberg on one of my keynotes, right? I talked about how there's only the part that you can see, but you never know what's happening beneath the surface, right? So it's a very, it's a sensitive topic, I think, about knowing what other people are dealing with, right? So you want to be innovative. You want to have some like the new cool technology and tools, but you still need to understand how that innovation impacts the human resources on your team, right? And so I think that's kind of what this question is like, how are we pushing forward with technology, AI, machine learning, things like that, while still making sure that our teams feel valued and empowered and needed, and not fearing for their jobs to be replaced, in essence, right? So I think that's a pretty viable conversation, not just with our employees, but even with students, right? My son is almost 17, and he's like, I don't know what I want to be. I feel like machines are going to create everything, right? So I think it's a lot more to talk about, the human aspect of when you're innovative and you're looking for new technological solutions. How do you make sure that the people that are using those solutions, in this case, it was you, right? Because people didn't think you would be interested in a new tool. But I think the question is more like, how do we make sure that we're checking in with our leaders, or checking in with the people who report to us, and to make sure that they are comfortable with these new innovative technologies and platforms and tools, and they don't feel replaced by them.
I'll tell you, I think that it's really important that we are, treating, and this is one of the tenets of Kemp Solutions. We want to ensure that people go into the workplace and they're treated with dignity and respect. And a way to do that is by having conversations and creating environments where there can be an exchange of information. And then the leader's responsibility is how you handle, those suggestions and those changes. And I think something else, to one of your previous points, when it comes down to the responsibility of the leader in maintaining the thermostat, of the team, is ensuring that you're not only trying to build the best employee for your organization, you're trying to build the best person that may be at your organization for that period of time and then transition away. And so in the event that there is some measure of technology that's coming that may not necessarily be, to be modest enough to realize that some of this technology is just not going to fit with Kemp Solutions, but I know another organization that it would fit, and I know someone there, and I'll help you get there. That to me is level leadership. That's the type of leadership that makes the person better, and not just trying to stick them within your own organization. I think that's super duper important, and I think that creates space for people to bring those innovative ideas without fear of losing a position.
I like it. Okay. Let's see. I've got another question, and then we'll see if we've got some folks with new questions. This one is, if you did a TED Talk on leadership, what would the first line be?
The first line would likely be, are you sure you want to be a leader? That's, that would be, that's likely how I would begin. Are you sure? I
That's
don't
a
know
good
if
one.
you know how hard this is. You can see like, the Wizard of Oz is a monster, but this curtain is a beast. Are you sure you want to be? Yeah, that's likely how I would begin. Man, what a great question. Never heard that before. That's how I. Then that's that. That's how I would start.
You're like, and that's how I'm going to start my TED Talk. I like it. All right. So let's follow back up in our chat. So Chris said, I really love that answer. I think also getting feedback from everyone you work with is, through different mediums is a great way to ensure that one's leadership approach between innovation and mental wealth is balanced.
Yeah, there's four things that fast learning organizations do. High performing organizations: they see, they solve, they share, and they provide feedback. See, solve, share, feedback. When you have organizations that are doing that, those are the ones who have that psychological safety within the workplace, where they're able to share information, they're able to solve it without the restrictions that may commonly be thought of. And to Chris's point, they're willing to give feedback, meaning that they're willing to let the organization know, look, there's a better, like the Toyota example where the guy said, if we just move, this belt over here, then I don't have to twist and turn and walk, and I don't have to go see the doctor and so forth so many times a year. If we just move this over here, then everything gets better. But when we create a mechanism of feedback, to his point, because it doesn't just have to be face-to-face, particularly in the hybrid environment. If we create a creative space for that feedback, then we can certainly be better. Volume control is important, but that's probably another topic for another day.
Another day. I love it. It was a really good question. And Chris, thank you for that. I think the key there is having those different mediums, because we do have, for example, on our team, we do have people who are differently abled, right? And so we try to make sure that, and I fail at it sometimes as a leader, as hard as I try to make sure that everything that we do, create, post, and promote is accessible to everyone on our team. We do have some people who are differently sighted, right? And so we need to be conscious as leaders that we're looking out for everyone on our team, even if it's that one person that may have a different need for access or accessibility. Utilizing those different platforms and different tools to communicate is very important, especially when we're trying to make sure our teams are diverse, not just with thought, but just even in their skills and abilities, right?
Sure. I see a question at the top of the chat on my screen, and I just want to jump right to that quickly. It says, can you share an experience where you had to lead through a significant change or crisis that required lots of mental resilience? What lessons did you learn? So two of the things, three of the super hard things I had to do. One was when the Navy transitioned from all male combatant ships to bringing females on board. Mm-hmm. Herculean effort. When president, that was I can't remember who the president was at that time. I think it might have been Bill Clinton, who also not long after that decided that we would have something called Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And then another president came in, President Barack Obama, who decided that we were going to repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell. I mean, you're talking about hard. That's like 4 H's. Hard. But so for the resilience, the point of resilience was especially to the person who was coming in for the change. And so for the women to transition on board the ship, to deal with the interesting, and I'll just very frankly say negative energy that came with their presence, took a measure of resilience. There were, I was in leadership from the very beginning of my career to the very end. And so in a leadership position, helping them, build their resilience, as well as my responsibility to champion, their presence on board the ship, was tough. And thankfully, I was able to use those same lessons that I learned there. Again, a measure of compassion, a measure of empathy, when it came down to Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. The biggest thing when it came down to those particular changes was being able to express a measure of understanding, most importantly, a measure of empathy, so that we could all, communicate and figure out how to get along. And then in other crises environment, it's really the same thing. Helping people. When there's a saying that Maya Angelou gets credit for, and I'm not sure who said it first, but when people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so when you are able to just live that out and let that be part of your leadership style, absolute game changer. And people will run through troops and jump over walls for you when they realize that you care about them, and you have, of course, the appropriate measure of competency within your skill set.
Okay, that's good. I like it. Thank you for that. Thanks for jumping to that question. I appreciate it. All right, so Chris, hold on. Chris mentioned there's also neurodiversity within our team. And he says, for example, he's an autistic person who has a different, unique way with informational processing. So having a leader that can really be in tune with that in any organization is key, as everyone's learning and informational processing styles are different. And so that's good. That's a good point, Chris. Thank you for that.
Yeah, my superpower is ADHD. And so because I'm compassionate enough to understand that we don't all learn things the same way. That's just a great point, Chris.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about. I'm gonna see if we've got folks in the chat. So this is my pulse check. We're a little bit like 40 minutes in, and so I want to know if whoever's in the chat on any of the platforms. I want to know what the last movie you watched on Netflix was, or the last movie that you watched. And so while we wait for those responses to come in, just a pulse check. Raymond, we do this just to make sure folks are engaged and paying attention and interacting. So what's the last movie that you saw? And we'll talk about that while we let folks respond. We know there's a lag.
The last movie I saw on Netflix was a rewatch of 21 Bridges. That is one of my, I really, really like that movie. It's got Chadwick Boseman in it. And he's got several one-liners that are just fire. And so the most recently, I came back from I was in this town about 30 minutes away from me. And as I drove home, there's a measure of anxiety that I get, again, my superpower working against me sometimes. And the way I would decompress is there's a scene from that movie that I would watch where he's getting interviewed by the internal affairs, and his response to their questioning, I thought was just, top tier. So that was the last movie I watched. How about you?
The last movie I saw on Netflix was, I'm embarrassed almost, and I don't know if it was Netflix or Amazon Prime, but it was Heart and Heart. It was like a Kevin Hart movie, comedy. I know, it's so bad. It's bad. I want to say it was like Heart and Harter or something. I don't know. It's like some.
Yeah.
And I fell asleep on it, so I don't remember much about it. It's so bad. So bad. TV's not my thing. So Chris said the last movie he watched on Netflix was Oppenheimer.
Yeah. Yeah. The atomic bomb.
That's deep. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Raymond's face is like, okay. All right. So we've got about 15 minutes left. And so I want to talk. Oh, Alicia says she saw Shirley. Like the movie, like back in the day, Shirley? I don't know which one it is. I'll have to check that out. Someone said they watched Your Honor. It was the last show, and the show was crazy. Have you heard of that one?
I have heard of Your Honor. And I've seen the previews, but I try to stay away from series because I get hooked in them. And then I'm mad because I'm waiting on the next episode. So, but yeah, I watched the preview and I'm like, man, that's probably super good, but I'm just not going to jump in there.
I love that. And you know what? I do the same thing. I think because I see television as a mental wealth withdrawal more often than not, right? So I try to very much limit the amount of content that I put in to my brain, especially as I'm responsible for creating new content to put out, right? And so I'm the worst. That was a wrong choice of words. We're just going to keep it moving. Pretend I didn't. But no, it's an interesting, it's an interesting perspective of like people think TV and social media is like they couldn't live without it. You know what I mean? Like, oh hi, Carlene. Oh, Shirley Chisholm. I feel so bad right now. Okay, awesome. I should have known that, huh? That's probably lost a little bit of lamination on that statement, but okay, that's all right. Thank you, Alicia, for telling us that. And so, no, I don't even, I'm thrown now. Now I'm thrown for a bit of a loop because I should have known that that was the Shirley Chisholm movie. I remember seeing the movies.
You're talking the withdrawal. You were talking about the withdrawals from.
Oh my gosh, social media, yeah. But that's a great example actually because when I see movies like Shirley Chisholm or movies like Selma, there are certain movies that I know for a fact that I can't watch because they may, even though they're meant to be a mental wealth deposit, right? It's supposed to be something good for me. It's supposed to be learn, I can learn from it. I'm the opposite, right? I tend to feel those things. So we were at a art museum yesterday, and the owner has pictures that she took while she was at, in Senegal in Africa, and some of those pictures just brought up feelings that I'm like, this was meant to be a deposit. We came here to see cool art, and I saw stuff, and I felt, almost overwhelmed by it. So it was what I thought was a positive was a negative. What I thought was a debit was a withdrawal. And in this case, most of the time, TV and movies for me are a withdrawal. So I try to stay away from them unless they make me laugh. And so I don't know who watched. Oh, Michelle watched Bridgerton. That was her last thing on Netflix. Are you familiar with Bridgerton?
I'm not.
Yeah. It's a very interesting show about I guess old England, but just in the all African American cast. Yeah, so a bunch of bustles and brown people. It's interesting. I refer to Bridgerton as soft porn, so I can't watch more than I watch. It was a bit much for me, Cheryl, but we know who is the boss over here. We know it's you. So, all right. So we got a couple of minutes before we end. Tell us how we can support you. What do you need right now to help you in your leadership journey? So I know that keynote speaking is something that you are that we are helping you with from a Phoenix Speaks perspective. But what can other listeners and people who are watching this show, what can they do to support you, find you, work with you?
Sure. First and foremost, the easiest way to find out more about me would be to connect with me on LinkedIn. That is where most of my content is mostly written. A few videos that are posted there. I also have a website. It's kemp-solutions.com. And I'm on all the relevant social media platforms. But the LinkedIn is the primary place where you can find me and just discover more about my perspective on leadership. I've written several articles there and on medium.com as well. But what I would truly enjoy, because I believe in relevant relationships. So if we connect on LinkedIn, we're going to connect, by the way, on LinkedIn. And then if you once you discover my content, if you know someone who would gain value from having me come and do a keynote speech, or perhaps even some executive coaching, because I am not only a John Maxwell certified speaker, coach, and trainer, but I'm also a Y Institute coach. So if you know someone who's interested and may find value in those things, please extend the invitation to them, as well as connecting with me there on LinkedIn. That's the best way. I love to do keynotes and share experiences, and it doesn't have to be big groups. I've talked to very, very large groups, but I think it's more impactful when we're able to have a conversation and some dialogue, very similar to what we're doing right now. And so that would be my ask. Connect with me and connect me with others who are seeking to build resilience and loyalty within their organization.
I love that. And then I want to go back really quick. While we still have a couple of minutes, you mentioned your Y Institute certification. And so I had the pleasure of allowing Raymond to do my kind of assessment. And so tell me what is it called the Y statement? What is it?
Yeah,
What's it called?
my Y operating system. And so for those who are online, imagine the times that perhaps someone asked you. It used to be common in the old job interviews, is they would say, describe yourself without any demographics and without any history of where you've worked and what you've done before. And it used to be a stumper, yeah, as far as I was concerned. I was like, how do I even do that without telling you my name, where I'm from, and who I'm with? In discovering our why operating system is built on our why, our how, and our what. Again, our why, our how, and our what. We believe that there are 9 different whys, and connect with me and I'll walk you through all of them. But my why, how, and what I would describe as this. Success to me happens when I'm able to find a better way and share it with other people. How I do that is by challenging the status quo and traditional thinking. Ultimately, what I bring to every relationship, whether it be with a person or an organization, is a contribution that will be beneficial to all. So that's my why operating system. And I can build that out for anybody who is interested in connecting with me on that platform.
I'm trying to find mine. I'm gonna try to find mine and find what my Y operating system.
Yeah,
result.
because I thought yours was super duper accurate, and
Did you
I
really?
think
Okay.
I did, and I'll race you to put.
You're what? You what?
I'll race
You
you
race?
if you
I
don't have it
got
at your
it. I got
fingertips.
it. I got it.
Okay,
I
you
got
win.
it.
Let's go.
I got it. All right. So wait, which one? So simply said, why my why is I believe that success happens when I contribute to a greater cause. How I do that is by seeking depth, breadth, and details. And what I bring is a trusting relationship where others can count on me. So I thought it was a very interesting activity. So I encourage you guys, if you've not done this Y operating system activity, definitely reach out to Raymond for that. It was very enlightening. So I know I rushed through it. I went really quick, and Raymond was like, "Slow down, take your time." But it was, I think it was pretty spot on. So I'm interested to hear what Mashera and Chris may have to say in that regard, because they may have a different perspective. One of the courses that we teach is the Corn Ferry 360 leadership, 360-degree leadership feedback survey, which is what Chris mentioned earlier. And so it's always interesting to see the difference between how your peers see you, how the people, your direct reports see you, how the people that you report to. A lot of power in that. But I like this Y operating system because it fits into everything I do, from a familial perspective, in the community, in my company, in my organization. All of those apply to this Y operating system. So I'm a fan. I think people should definitely reach out to you for that, if nothing else, so that you can get that. And then Chris has a question about that. So he wants to know, operating system evolve over time?
Yeah, it does evolve over time, right? So we're 11, 12 years in. The Y Institute was established 12 years ago. We have interviewed over 150,000 people, and we have it doesn't change. And when I look back over when I look back over my life, and I've asked many of my clients the same thing: is this who you have always been? And you think back to not just adulthood, because people enter into adulthood at different times. So there's not a miracle at 18, you jump the room and all of a sudden you're adult. Okay, maybe voting wise, that's true. But when it comes down to how you behave and how you treat other people, not necessarily. But as an adult, as far back as I can remember, finding a better way, challenging the status quo, and contributing to others is how I'm built. It's been in my DNA as far back as my memory goes. And the others say the same. There we go.
Yeah, no, I would say that's probably been me my whole life, right? And I found some superpowers in my Y operating system. So I love that. Thank you for uncovering those for me and for the team and for what we're doing. So before we wrap, I'm going to just remind everyone what we do and why we do it. So Phoenix Speaks in 2020 Lives Change. We exist to change the conversation around mental health, mental illness, and suicide prevention. I want to thank you, Raymond, for this conversation and leadership, because we've got people that right now that are in leadership positions and they're struggling and they don't necessarily have a safe place to have those conversations. Their families have a very high level of expectations of them just figuring it out. And so we have these conversations and these shows and these LinkedIn lives so that people can get tools that they can use every day to manage their mental wealth. Leadership solutions like those that have been expressed by the Honorable Raymond Kemp are just tools that we can put into our toolkit and remember and use them when those withdrawals come, especially the ones that you mentioned that are those unexpected ones we didn't see coming. We need to have a saving. We've got to have a safe place to fall. And these kind of conversations are a part of that. So thank you so much for your time today. I think this was a great conversation. I think Chris has one more thing before we wrap. He says, for me, his why operating system is really about helping others in his day job who have experienced different kinds of marginalization and disenfranchisement. And so that is spot on. I will tell you that Chris is an advocate of advocates. And is not afraid to show up and do all the things that are necessary for those that don't have a voice. So, Chris, I'm going to give you kudos, you and Michelle both, for supporting your work and our work. We couldn't do it without you. So I'm so honored. This was a great conversation. And since you are the king of one-liners, and you'd like to have something real quick and jazzy, so what's your one quote you're going to leave us with today that we need to remember that we heard on this live?
Love it. There's 10 two-letter words. 10 two-letter words that'll make you a better leader for sure, make you a better man, a better woman, a better person. Those 10 words are, if it is to be, it is up to me. If it is to be, it is up to me. It takes the pressure off of everybody else and puts it where it belongs, and that's with us, whether it be building relationships or building community. If it is to be, it is up to me. Let's go.
I love it. Thanks, guys. Have a great rest of your weekend. Have a great week.